So I've never really used this channel for vlogging, and I did it a little bit on my other channel, and those were not the videos that people actually watched, so I'm not really sure why I'm doing it here, but things are getting pretty crazy in my world, and pretty bad in my world. I spend a lot of time on YouTube, and I certainly see a lot of people who are in way worse shape than me, so I certainly don't have a monopoly on misery or struggles. But anyway, things are kind of rough right now, and I figure maybe this descent into madness I should make an attempt to document, since even I don't really understand what happened in my last few, and maybe if this stuff is here on YouTube, I can go back and kind of reflect on it. Maybe things won't end up as bad as they did when my world fell apart in 2003, or in 1995, or 1996, or in 1999. At my age, I question if I have the strength to go through another one of those type years. But anyway, yeah, so those who are not familiar with me, because I really don't put a lot of personal stuff on my YouTube. Oh gosh, super quick bio. Grew up in a broken home. I don't feel like elaborating on that, but I realize that's pretty common for most people. So kind of due to some crazy family happenstance, ended up on my own, in a very, very on my own sort of way, on my own at 17. And prior to that, I had through also happenstance and a love for music, and a love for electronics, I had become a radio DJ, and also had a reasonably successful mobile DJ service, which to some degree I still have to this day. And I pursued those dreams at 17, and I didn't really have any extended success, but I did have success, some success here and there. I would imagine there are some people in the area of Cheyenne and Laramie, Wyoming, and northern Colorado that still remember me as Dan Mahoney from KKAZ radio, and also from Rock U 1029 KRQU. I had pretty strong listenerships in both of those stations, which more or less covered the same market. I also worked a couple of stations in Casper, Wyoming around that time. I had a very short stint as Dan Mahoney at KVOC in Casper, Wyoming. And prior to that, I could be heard in Casper, Wyoming when I was on KWIV in Douglas, which was the place that gave me a start as a teenager. Eventually I ended back in Casper at KCSP C107, which was Casper's first FM country station. And that looked like it was going to be a really great thing for me until it wasn't. In 1990, the station got sold, and I had a rather nice apartment, which was a trade out through the radio station, which resulted in me not only being unemployed but homeless. And for whatever reason, in the Casper market, um, former C-107 air staff were really looked upon as toxic by the rest of the market. I'm really not sure, but yeah, all my attempts to get in at KTWO and KTRS went nowhere, and let's just say I didn't leave KVOC in the best of terms. So there was that. Um, um, anyway, if those are stations that ring a bell for you, and you lived in Casper and you listened to the radio back in the late 80s or 1990, I went as Dan Mahoney on KVOC, also on KWIV. And then when I was on KCSP, initially I wasn't supposed to be on-air staff. I had already burned way more than my share of bridges in radio, and they they were giving me a chance just because I still had some people who said that I was really good at running a tight audio board, and that I was talented. I was just kind of a loose cannon, and they were like, well, we need somebody that can run an audio board, and maybe if we get this guy in here, as long as we don't give him an open mic, we should be all right. And that actually worked for a while. I was actually grateful to be back working in radio enough that I did keep my mouth shut. Just did my rather nice cush job and enjoyed my rather nice cush, provided a cush apartment, and things were pretty good until one really crazy night in late 1989 when it got really windy. And anybody who's ever lived in Casper, Wyoming knows that Chicago is not the windy city. Casper, Wyoming is the windy city. I've never been any place that has wind comparable to Casper, Wyoming. Yeah, I don't know how many other people from Casper are watching this, but if you've been to Casper, you know what I mean. And one night the wind was just worse than normal, and our satellite programming that was coming in kept cutting out because the wind was whipping the satellite dish so much that it couldn't stay locked in. And I was in a conundrum because it was about 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, I don't know, wee hours of the morning, and there was nobody awake I could call. I did not want to wake up the program director. I certainly didn't want to wake up the general manager. In fact, I don't think I had a direct number to him. But I didn't feel like I could just sit there and broadcast the constant cutting out of our satellite feed, and just sit there and do nothing. I felt like I was obligated to do something. So I just I started playing music. I was already familiar with what the station's live format was, because my best friend was the person. My best friend at the time. It was a person who was most instrumental in getting me that gig. He was the evening DJ, and I often sat in with him through like the second half of his shift, and just I'd been in broadcasting for a while at that point in time, so it wasn't rocket science for me to read a format clock and understand how a song rotation worked. And most all the music was on cart anyway, so it's just like play the cart, play the next cart down at the next interval when you're supposed to play the next hot current rotation song, play the next cart down, and so forth. And so I just being cognizant of what songs had already been played on the satellite feed, I just kind of started following the station's format, and just playing basic liners, and at points where basically pre-recorded liners, and at points where it felt like there needed to be something there, I just said the most absolutely basic stereo station slogans. Didn't say my name, and didn't just Just, hey, KCSP, Casper. I don't even remember what the hell the slogans were. I do believe that was before we started identifying as smoking country. So, whatever we were at that time, C107, gave the time, hit the next song, and got out quick. And I got a phone call from the general manager. Oh my Lord, he sounded pissed. It's like, why are you on the air? I'm like, because I had, I'd been very much told that that they were putting me there to run boards, for their satellite feed, and syndicated satellite feed, and that I was not to be speaking on the air, and that was made very, very clear, and so the general manager's name was Rick Paisley. And I've lost touch with him many years ago, and God knows how old he'd be by now. If he's still alive, I would be surprised. But Rick Paisley called, and he did not sound happy. And I tried to explain what was going on. And he's like, yeah, okay. I'm like, well, I put the satellite feed in the Q speaker so he could hear it, and it was still cutting in and out, and the winds were unbelievable. Unless, of course, you live in Casper and you realize winds like that happen quite a bit. And he was like, well, I guess keep doing what you're doing. He sounded upset, but he did tell me to keep doing what I was doing, so I did, which was very, which honestly wasn't much. I was just simply following the format and giving just enough station identification and saying what I was playing and saying station slogans that were pre-written on the wall in front of me to make it sound like the station was on the air, and live and manned. And when the morning guy came in, and I cannot remember his name to save my life. Tim E. Dean, I think. When he came in, he really shocked to see me on the air, live on the air, not just playing the satellite feed. And the wind had settled down, and the satellite feed was good. I could have gone back to it, but the general manager Rick had already told me, hey, go ahead and do what you're doing, and don't. Oh, he also said not to leave the station. He was going to have a discussion with me when we got in, and I'm fired. But oh well, that was fun while that lasted. And at that point, I was no stranger to being fired from radio stations in Wyoming. So okay, whatever. Here we go again. And so I was telling Dean what was going on, how I expected to be, and I'd become fairly good friends with Dean at this point, and Tim E. Dean, and I was having, he's like, well, I listened to you on the way in, you sounded fine. I was like, well, I'm not really doing anything, and when I was trying to do more personality-oriented radio, the general consensus was I sounded really good. I just didn't follow directions very, very well. I acted like a teenager, which of course I was a teenager. So there you go. So he, so chatted with him and hung out in there, and eventually, Rick Paisley showed up early, and so did the program director, who's I don't remember his full name. He went by Doc on the air. I'm sure he had a last name he used on occasion, but generally he was just Doc, and all I remember is Doc. But I went in to have a conversation with Rick and Doc, and I'm expecting to get fired. And the general manager asked why he was never informed that I was capable of doing live radio. So that was quite a discussion, to say the least. At that point, they decided not only did they want me to do live radio, but that they wanted me to do their afternoon drive, because they had asked me for an air. They had my air check on file, but it had never been listened to. And he listened to it, and he's like, "Yeah, we need you on afternoon drive." I was terrified. It's one of the very few times I ever got stage fright on radio, But wow, yeah, stage fright hit me hard. I'm like, whoa, it's 3 in the morning. I'm all kinds of competent. I'm not really worried about who's listening. You know, even at 10 o'clock at night, I'm not too concerned about who's listening. But oh my lord, like suddenly I'm at what I believe was at least the number 3 station in Casper. And, you know, I mean, they hadn't really been arbitrage released since C107 had gone on the air. It was a very new station. But everywhere I went, it seemed like people were listening to KCSP. I mean, let's face it, in Wyoming, people, you know, that's cowboy state. People like country music. And by 1989, pretty much everybody had an FM radio in their truck. So, you know, you listening to the AM country station, which is not really a music station as much as it's also a news and information station, or you're listening to the AM country station that has really good country music on it and is a music station, but also signs off kind of early and has a kind of weak signal. Yeah, I'm talking about KVOC. Or do you listen to that new FM station, which has a tremendously clean signal? Yeah, people were listening, and I was nervous. And I don't feel like those shows were bad, but they weren't good. Just, you know, I was going through the motions okay, but I wasn't delivering the personality that they heard on my air checks from previous stations. And had another meeting and told them that that's why I was nervous. And they ended up putting me on the night shift, which kind of created a rift between Paul and I, because he certainly didn't bring me in there to steal his job, and I certainly had no intentions of stealing his job, but it resulted in Paul going to overnights, which he hated, and me going to evenings. Anyway, there were quite a few. I got moved around a lot at that station. For a while, I was doing this really weird early morning thing that was sort of like a team show in the morning. That was a blast. Didn't last very long. God, that was a blast. It was supposed to be me covering the news. I had previous newscasting experience, so when the news guy quit or got let go or whatever happened, that was one of those situations I felt like the less I knew, the more comfortable I was. Yeah, he was gone, and somebody needed to read the news, and that became me. And yeah, I had already kind of let the goofball out on the air, and that just wasn't going away. And it was entertaining, but they were wanting a straight news guy, and yeah, I think they put me back on evenings. I do know I ended that show as the evening guy, or that station as the evening guy, and I did the last broadcast before they signed off, and I was really sad about that, and went on to lose my apartment and basically become a dependent with my girlfriend, which wasn't really good for my psyche. I mean, I feel like we had a good relationship at the time, but being dependent boyfriend didn't really make me feel good about myself, to put it mildly. And on top of that, long distance phone calls were very expensive, and I was creating a phone bill for her that I couldn't pay, simply trying to find more work. That's kind of how you found radio work back then. Yeah, the world was a lot different before the internet really took off. Wow, I'm 19 minutes into this. I was just going to give a bit of an introduction and drop the names of some of the places where I used to be somebody, and hopefully maybe some people would stumble across this through the magic of the YouTube algorithm and be like, oh, that guy. Yeah, that guy was entertaining on the radio. Remember him. Anyway, instead I rambled about KCSP. I think I set a good precedent for what this vlog is going to be like. Anyway, it's Monday night. I'm facing losing my apartment very soon. And I really don't know how I'm going to deal with that right now. My karaoke DJ business is not quite at rock bottom, but it's hanging by a not so good thread. I'm doing one show at a bar in Glendale, which was actually always one of my dream karaoke gigs. I've replaced a man who I consider to be one of the best KJs I've ever met, Chris Christian, and I'm not doing such a great job at filling his shoes, and I really don't understand why. I can't put my finger on why I'm getting such a poor turnout there. I mean, it's easy to say it's COVID, because everything's COVID, but I think there's a lot more forces at work than that. I do know people come in, and most people seem to have a really good time, but I'm not getting the amount of return crowd that I would normally get at a bar where the karaoke is that good. And I also see that there's a disturbing amount of turnover with bartenders. In fact, I had a bartender just quit mid-show and walk out on her first night, Saturday night, and that was odd. Without giving details, which really are kind of private, let's just say I'm not getting paid the market rate right now, and I underbid that show at less than market rate, and for the last couple of weeks I've been getting considerably less than what I underbid it at a time when I'm about to lose my apartment. So it's scary indeed. So I'm out looking for more karaoke work, which generally the best way to do that is network during the evening when karaoke shows are going on, and see what kind of crowds or what kind of places, and talk to bartenders, get names of owners and managers to maybe come back and talk to later, but at least fill out the situation, find out if it's who is and is not worth talking to. Anyway, I'm sitting in front of the old brass rail at 38th Street in Thomas. I've never hosted here, but this has been kind of one of my regular hangs to go out and sing at through several different hosts, and also one of my favorite places to eat. Not paid promotion or anything, but I tell you, if you're in Phoenix, you want a good deal and a good breakfast, skip the chains, come to the old brass rail, 38th Street in Thomas. They got a great breakfast. When I was a cab driver in the 90s, it was hands down the best deal in town. It was like $3 or something for the equivalent of like a Denny's Grand Slam. The price has gone up because, let's face it, food's expensive now, but it's still a fabulous deal, and it's still a fabulous breakfast. So anyway, I'm going in there. They let their karaoke services go after as soon as the pandemic hit, a little over a year ago, and I really don't know what the status of karaoke is here. It's been quite a while since I've come in here. They've been open off and on during the pandemic, with social distancing very strictly enforced, and still serving their food, which is fabulous. So I've been coming for breakfast and coming for burgers when I can afford it, and anyway, it's been a while, so I'm heading in here to find out what they're doing for karaoke these days, as this is a place where the people are familiar. Some of the bar staff is familiar, a lot of the patrons are familiar, and I've hosted at a lot of bars in this part of town, so I expect that if I got this gig, it would organically build just by virtue of me being here and doing what I do. But who knows if the management will feel the same way. Also, I don't know what the status is of the former karaoke DJ. I'm forgetting his name offhand, but he's a fabulous guy, and I absolutely love coming to his shows. And I know he's a single father as well, and I'm not going to do anything that I believe is going to put him out. If they're bringing him back, then I want him back here. I don't want to do anything that would stop that from happening. So anyway, I'm about to go into the Old Brass Rail and find out what's going on. I do have another couple other spots that I'm looking at stopping and checking out tonight. One is with a KJ that I've met kind of recently, who seems like a cool guy. I told him I'd try to come out to his show tonight, so I'm going to try to come out to his show tonight. And I don't know. I don't know where the night's going to take me, but it seems like it's time to document it. So that's what's up. Maybe I'll do this again. Maybe this will be the one and only Dan vlog. Who knows? But wow, thanks for hanging with me for 25 minutes.